Welcome back to our next session of question and answers with Father Stephen. And the question is, Father, can you talk about sick pets who are suffering and your vet recommends putting them down? Is this a sin if you agree to this? So this is a time-sensitive question because I believe the person who wrote this question, they probably have a pet who is suffering and they need to know the answer. But this question was written or sent in June, and I'm only getting to it now. So if you have a very important question, please call the church and ask to speak to me. If I don't return your call, call again. Sometimes we can't hear the phone number correctly, or we write it down improperly, or sometimes I misplace notes also. So yeah, these time-sensitive questions, if they're very important, please call and I will try to do my best to answer it. But it is good for everyone to know, so I'm glad you asked about this. So no, it is not wrong to put pets down. Now, we live in an age where often we think of our pets almost as part of our families. A lot of people, when their pet dies or when they have to put them down, it can be very difficult for them to do that. So I think it's wrong to just put animals down or to kill animals, for sport or just for fun. So sometimes we do have to kill animals for various reasons. Let's say there's an overpopulation of wolves. So hunters might be told, okay, you can kill so many wolves this year and whatever. Sometimes we have to control pests. So for example, rats. We don't want rats or mice coming into our homes. Sometimes animals are diseased. A herd of cattle might be diseased and they have to be put down. So there can be different reasons as to why animals are put down. But yes, ideally we should respect animals. We shouldn't kill them unnecessarily. When it comes to animals and their suffering, animals do not have an immortal soul. And because they don't have an immortal soul, their life and everything about their life is not the same as for us. In other words, when animals suffer, their suffering is not redemptive. Their suffering is not going to benefit them in the afterlife, because for animals there is no afterlife. Now, some people get very concerned when the topic of animals and the afterlife come up, and they can't imagine heaven without their pet. And what I always tell people is, listen, if for your happiness you need your pet with you, God can arrange that. But keep in mind that God, in the Bible, it says that there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And I believe that the new earth will be populated with animals and we will enjoy animals. And in fact, God can recreate your exact pet if it's necessary for your happiness to have that happen. So animals do not have an immortal soul. Their suffering is pointless. Whereas for human beings, when we suffer, it is for a purpose. It is for a reason. So by our sufferings, especially as we are getting older and approaching death, our suffering is very redemptive, and our suffering can help us to prepare for death also. So our sufferings can help to atone for our past sins, draw down God's graces on the world. So suffering is a part of life. When it comes to putting down animals, the vet might recommend that you do it. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, in some cases, it's almost like an obligation that you do that. It's the right thing to do. But sometimes your vet might say, well, your dog has cancer and maybe, just maybe, we might be able to cure it, but it's going to cost you $10,000. And it's a situation where you're kind of stuck. You love your pet, you want to save your pet, but you can't afford to spend $10,000. If you don't spend that $10,000, your pet is going to die and suffer from cancer. So what do you do in that type of situation? And this too is a kind of dilemma for many people. And it's a principle that we apply even to human beings who have an immortal soul and whose suffering is valuable. So in other words, if an individual, is close to death and the doctors are saying, well, just unplug the person, remove all life support and everything else, and the family has to make a decision. It's often a very difficult decision to make. They will often call a priest who ideally knows certain principles. I always find it very confusing because every case is unique and it's hard to know exactly what to do. But there's a principle of ordinary means and extraordinary means. So is the person being kept alive using ordinary means? So an oxygen mask, a feeding tube, or an IV. These are all ordinary. But if it's going to cost $1,000 a day to keep the person on a ventilator or certain, not a ventilator, but certain machines that actually pump the heart or things like that, well, that's extraordinary means. So we can't afford that. The government or the healthcare system shouldn't have to pay that. So that's extraordinary means. But you also have to look at the possible outcome, the possible future. So even if this person, this human being, is kept alive, well, is he going to come out of a coma? Is he going to recover? So if not, that's a consideration to make also. So the cost or the extraordinary means involved, also the potential outcome of the circumstances. So even with human beings, we look at extraordinary means. So paying $10,000 to try and cure your pet, that is like extraordinary means. And I would say, no, you're not obligated to do that simply because you love your pet. So you can allow nature to take its course. And yes, it is sad to see our pets or innocent animals suffering, but it's a part of life. It's a part of nature. And that can remind us of our own eventual sufferings and our own eventual death. Animals tend to suffer quite well. It's interesting. So for us, we kind of internalize it and we think, why me? We complain, we sometimes blame people, we sometimes get angry with God. But animals, they just kind of adapt. A dog who breaks his leg, it just happily runs along, limping on three legs, and they don't internalize it the way that we do. I mean, sometimes, yes, they're down, but animals have a better view towards sufferings because they don't have that consciousness that we have. So their suffering is very different from our suffering also. So yes, no problem putting down your pet if that's what the vet recommends, or even if it's something that is just so costly you can't afford to, give treatment to your vet, and especially if there's no hope that your pet will survive much longer after that treatment. So thank you very much for asking that question. We'll see you all next time. God bless you. Thank you so much.